Welcome back, my beautiful friends. You're listening to A Moment of Zen right here on 710 WOR, the voice of New York, iHeartRadio. I'm your host, Zen Sams. Up in just a few minutes in our Innovation and Tech segment brought to you by Caldwell Soames, we're joined by our regular contributor, Paul Caldwell, Chairman and CEO of Caldwell Soames. And today, he's joined by Madison Malloy, author, producer, speaker, and host. From minimizing financial risks on Wall Street to crafting risque jokes for crowds in New York City's most prominent comedy clubs, Madison's journey through adulthood has been one for the books. Well, one book specifically. Time to Lighten the F Up, a self-help guide with a side of humor. Her debut self-help guide of sorts. Today we're chatting about when is the right time to close the bank of mom and dad, and what is the best way to support your adult kids amid fears of looming recession. Now, a recent article published on Yahoo Finance highlighted this topic very well, going on to say that parents to adult kids across the US are considering coming out of retirement or refinancing their homes in order to prop up their kids' bank accounts. And that cash request is only going to keep coming. So the question remains, when is the right time to close the bank of mom and dad in order to protect your own financial security? Here to chat finances, family, and avoiding a feud are my experts at hand, the amazing Madison Malloy and Paul Caldwell, Chairman and CEO of Caldwell Soames. Welcome to the show, my friends.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
Thanks, Zen.
Madison, we shall start with you, ladies first. Okay, so during the pandemic, younger generations increasingly, we all know this, had to rely on their parents for support after being thrown into the world of work, often with really no prior experience or savings to fall back on. So college-aged kids are now increasingly panicking about their financial stability, with a recent study finding they're as worried about inflation and recession as they are about mass shootings. So that's a ton of worry and pressure, and I am certainly empathetic towards this as a mom. But in your opinion, as an author and savvy entrepreneur, when do we say enough is enough?
Well, it's supposed to be after college. I mean, if you're a child that's lucky enough to have your parents pay for college, then that's great. But that really should be kind of the final thing. Obviously, the cost of living is rising faster than wages. So if somebody's out of college, instead of tapping into their parents' bank account because they need to be aware of their parents' financial future, that they've already sacrificed so much for them to begin with, consider living at home. And then maybe you can just contribute to some groceries, or maybe your parents will say, you know what, just save up. And that way, if something happens, we don't have to worry about it. But it is a sticky situation, depending on, what they majored in and what kind of jobs and what the job market is and with everything going on. But I think parents can limit their financial risk by maybe allowing them to move in for a year.
Yeah, you know what? You are spot on. So I thank you for saying that, because it's rather hard. Many parents do have an adult child living at home with them currently, and they are not alone. There's an epidemic of young adults in our society who are just struggling. I mean, struggling to get off the ground. And in many families, this works out fine. The adult child is responsible and contributes to the household, like you said, while they set themselves up to live independently. But if your adult child has moved home or never left and expects you to take care of their needs, you've probably started to feel resentful and frustrated. So I do agree.
Yeah.
Paul, welcome back.
Hi there.
You are quite the successful businessman and a parent to children. And in your opinion, the studies are now finding that children are largely spending their parents' cash on necessities like food and rent. However, 46% of parents have also seen their money used for holidays, and 66% report covering their children's cell phone bills. Last spring, savings.com found that 1 in 2 parents of children aged 18 and over were helping their kids meet ends meet. In fact, parents spend 23% more on their children's expenses than they do contributing to their own retirement or savings. You are a parent. What do you say to this? And what advice do you have to parents to stay ahead of this disastrous curve that many youngsters often end up taking that will ultimately weigh the parents down?
Our kids spend our money on necessities like video games without us knowing. And DoorDash, pizza and DoorDash. No idea. Anyway, I think that a lot of this really starts with financial literacy education. I think it matters how kids are brought up and what they're exposed to. I think the environment is very important. I don't think it's necessarily an economics conversation either. I don't think it's necessarily one person has more money or one family has more money than another family. I think no matter how much money someone has, we all want to get as much value for the money that we do have as possible. And I think that no matter if you're in an economically blessed situation or if you're in a financially distressed situation, when you have kids, you can still talk to them and get them into an environment where they begin to understand a little bit about money and its value, that money has value and that resources are there because someone paid for them. And also the idea that one can delay gratification. I think that's another thing in this society today. I see delayed gratification just isn't a thing people talk about. They want it now, and they want it like now means yesterday. And also they also feel a bit entitled to have it. And these are interesting conversations, I think. But from my perspective, the best thing someone could do is get their young children into financial literacy programs, help them to appreciate the value of money and the value of resources, and appreciate the amount of work that has to go into attain these things. That seems like it deals with the problem at the beginning. If someone's already in the situation and your 35-year-old son just moved back home and is now creating an impact, on your financial circumstances, that's just a sit down at the breakfast table and a conversation about, hey, look, you have to contribute, or you've got to find somewhere else or some other place to go. You can live here. It's not impacting us all that much, but look, you can't not contribute somehow. Find ways to contribute.
Yeah, and if you think about it, listen, there's nothing logical. I said this earlier about having children. Yes, they can bring great joy, but they can also bring great pain and frustration. I mean, children are messy. They cost hundreds of thousands of dollars to raise and often require parents to make extreme sacrifices. So if the decision to have children isn't logical, well, then guess what? It must be emotional. And as a mom, since I have children, you tend to parent out of emotion. And that's where, to Madison's point, you have to draw the line between logic and emotion, and to what you just said too, Paul. We have about 5 minutes left here. So Madison, quickly, let's chat. When should parents be reducing or cutting off financial support? And more importantly, how should parents balance their financial needs with that of their children? It sounds simple. I say set them up, to Paul's point, for overall success, but specifically financial success as early as possible. Give us a few pointers on this.
Yeah, so I like what Paul was saying, and I think it's, our school system, education system doesn't teach money, right? They teach you kind of how to be an employee. So it's up to the parents to educate the children as early as possible. And what Paul said was great, creating value, but also creating excitement. Doing games where you can see the compound interest if you put this away, and really showing them what those charts look like. Even if they're babysitting at age 13, hey, if you're putting away 70% of your babysitting money, this is what you could have at this time. So it kind of creates like an excitement level. But obviously, when kids get out of college, they're not going to have the highest paid jobs. So, maybe they can provide a little bit of assistance to make it a little easier, but I don't think it should be past the age of 25.
There you go. You said it. 25 should be the drawing point. Now, yeah, there definitely comes a time when it's healthy for any young person to feel independent or stand on their own 2 feet. And the groundwork for this, to both of your points, should start at school. It makes sense for students to find work during the holidays or part-time to get a feel for what it really means to work and get paid for that effort and weigh up the value of money from those endeavors. So for sure. Paul, more financially speaking, we have 529 plans for educational savings. They're helpful as soon as income is earned, maxing out Roth IRAs, traditional IRAs, and or 401ks. All of this should be encouraged, but I say not demanded. Most times one can't do everything. I mean, in the first few years of buying a house, for example, one may not be able to make the full contributions to retirement plans, and I think that's okay. We have about 3 minutes. What is the best investment for children, and what should you teach your children about assets?
I think if you create a plan ahead of time as parents, if you haven't had your kids yet, you're still thinking about it, I would tell you, or you've just had your children, I would tell you set up a plan. In our family, it's 12 years old. At 12 years old, The gift is you get an account, a brokerage account, a custodial brokerage account, and we start to put them in equities, and they start to learn about stocks, and they start to learn about value. And I love what Madison said. I like showing them. It is a big deal. You show them the chart here. Here's what your Apple stock did. They love it. They absolutely love it. And you can teach them the ups and the downs. I think getting them actively engaged in the process is the most important thing you can do, whatever the process means to you, because certain people have different means and different abilities and capabilities. But you can start with as simple as little things like making your bed, and they do something positive in the first thing when they get up. They can't have a failure of a day if they succeeded making their bed. And then they get a little bit of a token for that. That gets them a chit, not a demerit. That gets them a positive tick, right? And those positive ticks can add up, and they can see how when they do good things, they get the right kind of rewards for them. And when they do bad things, there's a demerit system. Hey, you chink away at your chits. You did that. You're down here. You lost a little bit because you did this or you did that. I think those kind of behaviors, creating those kind of behaviors, makes everything else so easy when you start to talk really about money. I just think it has to start happening earlier before they get sucked into some kind of an ideological framework where they don't appreciate, they don't believe, I mean, it's really messed up with the way some of these young people today, I see them when they come for interviews or they interview to be, work here part-time in the summer or be interns. Some of the ideological perspectives are scary. I think that's just rooted in their belief system, and that maps back to what they've been exposed to all the way into that, to that point. So that's what I think. I think it just starts early as soon as possible.
Well said. I couldn't agree more, and that's why parenting is extremely, extremely something to take very seriously, because we are influencing and affecting the next generation. So thank you for saying that. We are out of time. Thank you so much, dear friends. It was a pleasure chatting with you.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Pleasure, Zen.
Guys, as parents, we want our children to be happy, confident, and secure. We hate to see them suffer, and we will do anything that we can to take the pain away. Indeed, we would rather go through something painful ourselves than watch our children experience it. But you need to lead by example and also be reasonable in order to avoid a permanent, irreversible situation. That was our innovation and tech segment, brought to you by Caldwell Soames. That was the awesome Madison Malloy, author, producer, and actually crypto enthusiast. We definitely have to have her come back on to chat that. Check her out at the Next Madison podcast. Also head to her website, madisonmalloy.com, and she's on the gram at Next Madison Podcast. You're listening to A Moment of Zen right here on 710 WOR, the voice of New York, iHeartRadio. We'll be right back after this.
A Moment of Zen is brought to you by Caldwell Soames Incorporated, investing globally in transformative businesses like Original Digital Corporation, or ODC. ODC develops advanced consumer and commercial fintech solutions such as OG Pay, which will transform the way you manage your money. From sending and receiving money globally for free, paying for goods and services in person and online, pay bills, buy and sell digital currencies, all while earning interest. OG Pay is easy to set up, FDIC insured, and your information is secured. Check out ogpay.com.
Welcome back, my beautiful friends. You're listening to A Moment of Zen right here on 710 WOR, the voice of New York, iHeartRadio. I'm your host, Zen Sams. Welcoming back to the segment for our extended talk is Paul Caldwell, Chairman and CEO of Caldwell Soames. Welcome back, my friend.
Hi, Zen. Glad to be here.
Okay, let's dive right into this. So, Paul, in your opinion, should parents handle conversations about living expenses directly, and when should that be taking place? So if you think of it, once a child is out of education and is on the hunt for a job, in my opinion, this is a flag for parents that it's time to take a step back. The considerations of how much financial support is needed comes down to how much is required to allow the graduate to focus their energies on finding gainful employment. What are your thoughts on this, and how should parents handle conversations about living expenses?
I think it comes down to teaching your kids that they have options. And I think it's important for them to understand that as a parent, I'm okay with those options, whatever option is chosen. You can't invoke a degree of optionality in a conversation with a kid and then not allow them to make the choice because you already have you're predisposed that they're going to do this, even though you've given them a lot of options. If you're going to create optionality, then you have to be willing to live with whatever option they may choose, or at least to the extent it gets you into another conversation. Think of all the rock stars that you may know whose parents almost fainted when they dropped out of decided they weren't going to go to med school or law school or engineering school or whatever school because they were going to start a rock band. And, you end up with, Metallica or something like that. Right. I mean, but that's one, right. Or how many parents live vicariously through their kids with sports when they're in high school, and they just know that their kids are going to grow up and get into the NBA or the MLB or the NFL. And then that's going to bring financial relief to the entire family and the posse that goes along with it or whatever. I think all that's a mistake. I think a simple conversation with your kids early, getting them baked in, just like eating their broccoli is good. I think that understanding money is good. The more that they're included in those conversations, the better, and the sooner, the better.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And then if you look at it in retrospect, one would say to you, okay, as a parent, do you tell your kid there's the door upon graduation? I say no. Do you say to your kid, you can't come back here, I won't support you if they are 30 and they need that extra help? I would, of course, greet them with open arms, but with a plan. I wouldn't go into it, just, hey, here's a place for you to crash and I'm just going to be the sucker and I'm just going to pay for everything. It has to be well thought out. Boundaries have to be set. Expectations have to be set. You're now dealing with not a child, but another adult living in the house. And I tend to treat children as adults when they turn not 18, I say 21, but I have already started treating my eldest stepdaughter, Carly, who I love dearly, she's at University of Georgia, like an adult in my responses, in my reactions, in my expectations, but I will always be there for her to support her. But I do think, to your point, you have to treat everything in a very specific situation for each family. What works for you might not work for somebody else. But I think at the end of the day, 100%, Paul, to your point, it all comes down to financial literacy. You stress this throughout the interview, and I couldn't agree with you more. Once they understand what money is, what money does, what you can accomplish with money, and what you cannot accomplish with a lack of thereof, it's a game changer for them. So those charts, everything that you spoke of, I couldn't agree more. So you're clearly doing something right.
I think it comes down, Zen, a lot to questions. Asking your kids questions about money, about finances. And you know what? They'll come back and they'll ask you questions then later. My 13-year-old son came to me just yesterday and he asked me, hey, Dad, this coming summer after school, when I get a job, should I get a job doing something, or should I sit, on the computer and do drop shipping? I said, drop shipping? What do you mean? Well, I could sell stuff online by drop shipping. I saw it on this thing, and I could be a drop shipper and make a lot of money instead of just going and making a little bit, here or there. I said, son, you're going to be 14 years old. There are a lot of ways to make money. Let's have this conversation when I'm able to actually think about what you're saying, because he just jumped in on something else I was doing. But they will ask questions. They're inquisitive about money. If you make money part of the conversation, I think it's hard to do in a lot of families because money's not a positive thing. Too often, it's the thing you don't have enough of to begin with. So to talk about it is difficult. To talk about financial success and how they can be successful in that whole big picture, if you're sitting down here as a parent or a husband and wife struggling to make ends meet, kids aren't stupid. They hear the conversations that go on at night, the stresses, they feel it, they're part of it. So it's better to have a conversation with them about how they can mature and how they can grow and how they can grow out of that and through that and how you're going to help them do it. It's a teamwork effort and it becomes team family. When that happens, I think great things can happen no matter your economic situation.
Oh, yeah, I couldn't agree more. Well, thank you so much for this very insightful interview. I love getting perspectives from parents and entrepreneurs in general, because I think it sets up the framework for parents and non-parents alike for the generation that we are educating and that we are being role models to. But it really does just start at home, Paul. It really does. I mean, nobody could teach you financial literacy except a great foundational framework. And when you empower your children to not have to either live your circumstances, or maybe in a positive situation be an example and carry on the family legacy. I always say separate the children, right? If you are struggling financially, don't put it out there to your children and instill financial fear in them that they are going to also encounter the same hardships you did. Elevate them and lift them up if you're in a position of weakness. If you're in a position of power, like yourself, like myself, my 18-year-old stepson, who I've raised since he was 4, sells sneakers on the side. Now, this child has a very, very good life. He doesn't need to make extra money, but you know what? He always has money in his pocket because he doesn't like to ask for anything over his allowance, and that's okay. So he decided to have a side hustle, selling designer sneakers and trading them. And he has like a business going. And I'm very proud of the fact that he took this entrepreneurial mindset early on. He works hard at school. He's, on a league. He's part of like a really, really good foundation. And now we've instilled the value of entrepreneurship through financial literacy. So yeah, it all comes full circle.
I think so. 100%.
Thank you so much for joining, Paul. Till next time. Thank you. You're awesome.
My pleasure, Zen.
That was our Innovation and Tech segment brought to you by Caldwell Soames. That was the awesome Paul Caldwell, Chairman, CEO of Caldwell Soames, parent, dad, great example. Make sure you check them out. Head to some of their many websites, ogpay.com, navi.travel. You're listening to A Moment of Zen right here on 710 WOR, the voice of New York, iHeartRadio. We'll be right back after this.